Hello everybody, welcome back to Its Current Year for another quick battle ladder replay. Today played on the Red Desert map. I am playing the Warriors of Chaos against the Vampire Coast. I've gone a very wide build and I've taken a somewhat suboptimal legendary lord. Sigvald the Magnificent, just with his auric armor, not much else to put on him really. I've also got a fire sorcerer just for I actually didn't take fireball. I took piercing bolts, I took burning head, and I took flaming sword just to buff the melee sort of output of my front line. It is a fairly cheap and cheerful front line of Chaos Marauders. I've also taken a bunch of Forsaken, great for just buzzing through deckhand mobs and that sort of thing. I also have one just around here on the trees, which I was planning to take the circuitous route to, and just some Chaos Warriors. You know, good armor, shielded. So you know, if I've got handgun mobs or even summons, the deckhand summons, you know, can't put a lot of damage onto them. I've taken 3 units of Chaos Chariots. Sort of just had, I don't know, I just kind of felt like I'd face up against a lot of infantry, which is obviously the case, and just be able to plow through the front lines into the back line and just sort of drift around, just use the contact damage of the chariots. They don't need to stay in prolonged combat to do damage, just disrupt formations and that kind of thing. 2 units of Poison Hounds on the far side here, and another one on the other side of the battlefield here, Vanguard deployed, just so I had a view of my opponent. So we'll look at my opponent's forces. He has 3 units of the handgun deck droppers, as well as Luther Harkon, who has taken let's see here, Hornswoggle, and not much else actually. He stripped him right back. That's interesting. Yes, no spells. That's very interesting. He does have a vampire fleet captain here with invocation. So no summons. That's interesting. You don't see that very often with Vampire Coast, but the front line of deckhands with pole arms, a couple of crabs on the flanks, the bombers, which is actually going to be a really good pick against what I've taken, a lot of low tier infantry, some gunnery mob up the back here, and some Vanguard deployed hounds in the trees on the side here. So we'll get the battle underway. Doesn't start particularly well for me, obviously, given I don't have any Marauder Horsemen or things like that. I don't really have any good way to screen out here. I haven't even got a fireball, so I mean, this fire sorcerer is an easy pickup here, and will basically go down before I get any real action out of him. I don't even get close enough to get a burning head, and I sort of see this coming, and I decide, you know what, let's just make a bolt. He's pretty static here. Let's make a bolt for the front line. Cut my losses here. The sorcerer is going to go down. It is what it is. So I get my hounds out here. I do see these hounds, so I want them to kind of reveal themselves and allow myself to come back up. I should have left them in the trees. However, I took them out. I've got my unit of hounds just sitting here, giving me vision, you know, ensuring nothing, you know, can get around too far here as this unit of Forsaken comes across here. And as the front lines are about to meet, I'm sort of try and send my chariots in first to sort of get the target of the bombs, because I know they're not going to do a lot to the bombs, and these guys are going to be able to plow through the front line and into the bombers and disrupt them. So as the front lines hit, obviously we see here. We do have some summons. I must have missed that tooltip. That's interesting. Some more gunnery mob being summoned here, but the frontline fighting is going to go pretty well for me. Even Marauders are going to cut through deckhand mobs really quick, and I can push my Forsaken into the back onto the bombers, which likewise are going to go down very quickly. Getting the hounds in here just to imbue some poison, try and just help me sort of take out the take out the rotting Prometheans and keep them mucked up in the fight. But you can see here the bombs are doing a ton of damage, and these deckhand mobs are going to get into the rear and be able to shoot into the rear without the shield block chance. But I've pushed all my chariots through onto this deckhand mob. I need to be splitting them up though. However, I need to be bringing one down here to drift through these bombers, another one into here. But the frontline fighting is going well. Sigvald's just going to sit in here, and with his auric armor, he's just going to sit here and regenerate. The Chaos Warriors aren't really taking too much damage from the bombs because of their armor. The Forsaken are just going to rip through these pirate deckhand mobs and be able to push in here, but they are suffering a little bit at the hands of these bombers. There's big sort of just pit fights forming all over. Some of my infantry is beginning to regroup. Likewise on this side, my hounds and my marauders, and I'm just trying to bring them up and around the flanks. Couple of chariots here ready to come back in on a newly summoned zombie pirate gunnery mob. But you see the infantry is just making sort of the slow push through. The polearm deckhand mobs have been worn down, and I'm just trying to get good engagements where I'm getting into the rear, using the leadership debuffs to enforce crumbling on the undead. And I have to just ignore these. I have nothing to deal with any of these deck droppers. My only real play here is to make sure everything else on the ground is taken out and crumbling, so that my opponent is forced to land with something or suffer leadership penalties, and then I can turn to face possibly and get my shield block chance. But you can see these shots are getting ripped in. Even the Chaos Warriors here, 110 armor on Chaos War, 100 armor and silver shields, but with their backs turned, that means absolutely nothing. Sigvald's in here just chewing through some crabs. He isn't really taking any damage because likewise he has good defensive, obviously fantastic defensive stats and good armor. So none of really, even the crabs, rotting Prometheans will put a bit of hurt on him, but he can heal through a lot of it. And now I'm just trying to sort of get the surround in, make sure I'm being quick on the draw with regrouping my infantry that's broken off. And really the only thing that I'm left to worry about that are the hard to kill for me are the rotting Prometheans. So trying to just get my poison back in there just to give me some edge. Trying to keep Sigvald fighting. Trying to keep flank charges, keep moving around with my chariots, and just keeping on enforcing crumbling. We can check here up on the deck droppers, 30 kills, 33 kills, 28 kills. So they're putting some damage into my infantry, but it's starting to turn. Luther's obviously being forced to land and just try and form a bit of a blob around him, so the shots can hit home. But I'm getting my pounds back in. This side here, the crabs are pretty much down. They're down to 4 models and rotting very quickly. And at this stage, really the only thing left on the ground with any teeth whatsoever is the fleet captain. But even not outstanding stats. 40 melee defense is reasonable, but 30 armor means Forsaken will really get through him quite quickly. And we're getting to the point now where I'm pretty much forcing my opponent to land once I can crumble this guy off. This big blob's dealt with the last of the rotting Prometheans that were up here. Not much ammo left on the deck droppers, and obviously once they drop down onto the ground, they're pretty average combatants. Particularly given they can't really make the most of rear charges themselves with no infantry on the ground. So basically, I'm just trying to keep reasonably blobbed up. I know, Luther Harkon obviously will have may have a few more death streaks from his Terrorgeist, but that's not really. It's more focused on chunking down single entities rather than infantry. So it's not like a noxious breath or a fiery breath on, say, a dragon. So I'm just trying to keep this fleet captain pinned and just enforce Luther to come to the ground, which he now has to because the zombie pirate or the fleet admiral is dead. The vampire fleet admiral is dead, and you can see here deck droppers are gonna land on these marauders, and 3-on-1, they can get some decent damage in. But Forsaken are fast; they can pin a few models onto the ground, and as they're trying to run away, these deck droppers are going to take some damage. And I'm just trying to keep all my forces together like this, trying to get my regrouped units back in really quick. So basically, my opponent can't do that. Can't single anything out. Can't, use whatever combat ability these deck droppers may have in a 3-on-1 and get the most of the charge. Keep the encouragement order around Sigvald from keeping things from breaking. And it's just going to be a slow sort of series of cycle charging here. We can maybe give it a little bit of a quick play here. The hounds come back in and shatter. The poison would have been handy. It would have been handy to have a couple of hounds still on hand to keep their speed debuffed from poison, and keep them on the ground so they can't take off again. But as you see here, there's the tooltip. Without units on the ground, enemy has to land. We're also fighting in trees here. I think that might actually give Luther a little bit of a malice. And I was actually thinking here, given how strong Luther is, given he hasn't quite hit his healing cap yet, so he's obviously got the hunger. He's got some ability to regenerate. I was actually worried that Luther would still be able to tank this out. But Sigvald obviously is really healthy. He has some ability to put some damage to enemy heroes. He's a good combatant himself, and isn't really anywhere near his healing cap either, thanks to the auric armor. So we're just going to get a bit of a drawn out fight here as Luther slowly sort of gets beaten down, worked down. Obviously, Forsaken have a reasonably decent damage output. Everything else here is healthy enough so that Terror is not sort of taking an immediate effect, and we're not having sort of the ripple effect of Terror going through my units. But that will be the game. Bit of a different game. Obviously, bit of a real emphasis here on taking things that are either shielded or fairly resilient to the things that the damage output of the zombie gunnery mobs and handguns and that kind of thing, but also some units here that can actually effectively get through the front line and actually put pressure on the back line. So the pick of bombers here is an interesting one. I thought they would actually do better. I was a bit worried seeing them. Probably sending in my chariots first and drawing the fire from the first couple of salvos meant that at least the first couple of the first charge of my marauder line got into the zombie pirates reasonably intact and weren't sort of, one volley on the approach from a unit of bombers can pretty much strip about 25 to 30% off a unit of marauders before they even make contact with the front line if you arrange them right. Obviously a great pick by my opponent using them to get the, that fire sorceress was just a dead spend there. He did absolutely nothing, but Sigvald actually held up pretty well. There wasn't really anything that could, aside from probably Luther, who had his hands full elsewhere, there wasn't really anything that could really put any hurt onto him. And so he just sat there, tanking damage, healing through it, allowing the Forsaken to do what they needed to do. The Hounds sort of provided a little bit of poison on the rotting Prometheans and that kind of thing, just to and shut down the bombers and a couple of the deckhand or the gunnery mob summons that the fleet captain put down. So bit of a wider build, weird matchup. I don't have a great record against Vampire Coast. I'll be the first one to admit. I don't like playing against the Vampire Coast, but this was a bit more of a different build as well. Luther's always a good pick, so he's always tough to come up against. But yeah, happy with how that list performed. I think the Chariots did their job pretty well in getting through to the back line, and all in all, a pretty solid battle. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.